All right.
I was working for AT&T Telephone Company. I was a long-distance operator. And that was way back in the days when things were really just right during the Depression time. And I was working for them, and I had to work for 10 days. And they gave me a 4-day weekend then, finally. So I had been involved with other people and decided I just needed to get away and have a little retreat because of wanting to be in the Word of God. And so I took my Bible, but I opened the telephone book and put my finger on this place, and it said that it was the lodge up in Conifer. And so I showed my mother, and I said, "Do you think that I should do this?" And she said, "I think it's a good idea, yes." And so I called, and his mother answered, and she said, "Oh, well, we're closed for the season." And I was so upset. I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And she felt sorry. So she said, "Well, we're in a 3-bedroom little cabin, and we just are in 2 of them, and you could stay in the 3rd one if you want." I said, "I would love that." And so I told her when I would be up there. And I caught the bus the next day. I told her I was leaving the next day. I caught the bus the next day, and I got up into Evergreen because the bus didn't go all the way up to Conifer. And so he and his cousin came down to the bus and were sitting there in a truck watching to see all these people coming off and going different directions. And then they saw this girl. It's your turn.
We're both, my cousin Johnny, he's a divorcee, and he'd come up and help us on the ranch, to work on the ranch with us, and especially when we closed down, because that's when we got work done in the place that needed to be done. But at any rate, we had an old Studebaker pickup. That's what we had up there. And we both got in that pickup. I was driving it, and we went down to Evergreen from Conifer. It's about 7 miles from Evergreen. And so we went to the bus stop, Greyhound bus stop, and we sit there outside where they were going to stop and waited for the people to get off of it. And it was loaded, all kinds of people on it. And so they were streaming off of that bus. And both of us were said, "Well, maybe we can spot her as she gets off, so we can go up and introduce ourselves, you know." And so we watched, and pretty soon, here come this pretty little girl come off there, and he says, "I bet you that's her." And I says, "I bet it is too." So I stayed in the pickup. And he jumped out of the pickup and he went down there, and as she was exiting the bus and got on the ground, then he asked, he said, "Are you Laurel Wegener?" And she says, "Yes, I am." He says, "Well, I'm Johnny, and Dick Schellebarger's in the pickup here, and we come down to pick you up, because the bus didn't go any farther, see, so we had to." And so she come over, and we set her in between us. And it was old.
So I looked at him, and I saw his eyes, and I thought, "Oh my goodness, this young man looks so innocent." He does. He looked like he would never take advantage of anyone. His eyes were just so innocent.
And anyways, we talked and visited, you know, on the way up, and we got to the cabin. The lodge was closed down because we locked it for the season, for winter. But anyway, I took her in the cabin. It's a big cabin. It was a 3-bedroom, real nice. It was all modern. It's not up on the mountainside away from the lodge, which is down a little farther. But Mother took her into the bedroom and got her situated in the bedroom. And then I went ahead and I had work to do. Actually what I was doing was putting up a corral around the driveway in the house, and I was digging. We only had it by hand tools in those days, you know. No such thing as an automatic postal digger. And so I was, you go ahead, you can finish there.
Well, anyway, his mother asked him, he was up there, and she asked him, she said, you know, that the man that we are leasing this place from is going to be here tonight. Would you mind, this is him, would you mind going up and getting the fire started in that cabin so that it'll be all set and ready for him when he comes?
We done that on the weekends that he came up. We'd get this cabin ready for him and get it all heated up. It was chilly. So go ahead.
So, in the meantime, Johnny, the cousin, asked me if I would like to ride a horse. So I said, oh yes. He didn't know I'd never ridden horses.
She's never ridden horses before.
So
she wouldn't say that.
I got up on the horse, and we went up on the mountain, and we were going along this high mountain, and I saw a herd of elk. It looked like there was at least 30 of them there, and they just stood there and stared at us. And I was amazed. I had never seen elk before. The only thing I knew about were squirrels, because in Denver we had lots of squirrels. So we came back down off of that, and we went into the lodge, not the lodge, but the little cabin, and his mother said, she said that she had asked him to go up and repair the cabin and get it prepared for the man that they were leasing the whole place from.
Get it heated up and build the fire.
Yes, get it all heated up and build the fire. So I thought that I would like to go with him to see that.
Well, I asked you to, yeah, because it was such a nice cabin, really beautiful.
Yes. Well, anyway, Johnny came down, and he had left me off at the cabin, and he came down and said, something about me.
Oh, well, yeah. What I was doing is down digging post holes down there all the time while she was up looking at the cabin with Johnny. So he come back down there and he says, he had taken you horseback riding, you know, and so he come back down and he was she stayed up at the lodge then, and he came down with the horses and let them on down to the corral so we could put them back in the hall. We had about 30 horses. There were rentals, you know. I'd have to keep going for the guests. But when he come down and he went on to the corral. Meanwhile, here she come running down the mountain from the cabin to where I was down on the building.
Johnny told you something too.
Oh yeah. Oh, and he stopped. He went by to the horses and he stopped me and he says, he says, she's interested in you, not me. And I thought, oh, that gave me a little extra hope here.
So I ran down the mountain, I swung down,
and I was
around the pole and just buried.
Yeah, loosened it all up and swung around, you know.
And then he said, do you want to go up to that cabin with me?
Yeah, that's when.
And so I said, oh yes. So we went up to the cabin, the little 3-bedroom.
And I built the fire and everything.
Was it I don't remember what it was. It was a little cabin.
Well, it wasn't very little, it was pretty good
Was
size.
it?
Uh-huh.
Anyway, there was
real fancy one.
there was a piano in it.
Yeah, nice
So,
piano.
I sat down and I started playing hymns on the piano.
And I was building the fire.
And he was building
down
the
on my
fire.
knees.
So, he came and behind me, and he put his hands on my face. And I got up and I pecked him on the cheek and ran down the mountain.
I ran after her.
And he ran after me. And we got over to the cabin where his parents were. It was
And we both straightened
It
up.
was dinner time, or lunchtime really. And they ate dinner in the middle of the day. Anyway, I stood up and walked in. And,
We straightened up real
yes.
innocent like, you know.
I walked in and
Sat down at the
and
table.
then his mother and dad were sitting on both ends of the table, and he sat on the other side and
She was
looked at
across
me.
from him.
Yes, he looked at me, and
I looked up at her, and here she had I had charcoal from building the fire, I didn't know, and perfect fingerprints on her cheeks. I was standing behind her when she was playing, see, and I put my hands on her cheeks. I never saw it because she turned around and pecked me and ran, and I didn't get a chance to look at her at all, you know. And I looked across the table at her, and I see these big black marks on her. And I looked at her, and I goes.
his mom and dad
And so
were
they-
also going.
They were giggling on it both ends, but they go.
And of course, I had no idea.
She was completely innocent, just so proper, you know, prim and proper, and here was his big finger marks.
So dinner was over, and he told me what was going on. So of course I had to go wash my face.
She had to go wash her face.
So then, you were going to feed all the horses.
Yeah,
And he had 30 horses there.
in the corral, all in the corral,
All
because
in the corral, and they were all eating. And he had been so gentle with those horses that they would just do anything for him. They would. So they were all lined up, and I went up behind them, and I pet
she
each
had
one
never
of
been
them.
around horses.
And he didn't know that. I pet each one, and I said, "Oh, you're so pretty."
On the rump,
Yeah.
of all things. You stand behind them, and they're kickers. Some of them were, I had 3 or 4 jumpers, big, purebred jumping horses that were their neighbors, and we were boarding them. And they're real spooky. And you go around them, and they'd flash out with their feet like that. And she was patting them on the rear, you know, not real hard, but she was just patting them and patting them.
"Oh, you're so
And I was-
pretty."
I was-
And I went all the way down to 30 of them, pet each one of them,
Well,
and told them how pretty they were.
she was milling around
Yeah.
through all these horses.
And he was so afraid I'd get kicked, but I didn't. I think the Lord was taking care of me. Because I was very gentle with them too. And then I went back, and then I forget what we did. You took me for a horse ride up the canyon, and guess
That was
what
the
was
next
up
day,
there?
though.
Was this the next day?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I was on this horse, and of course they didn't know I didn't ride horses ever.
She's done pretty
Yeah.
good for the first time. She got her
We went
herself
up
on.
this canyon to the area where they kept a lot of the horses, where they could,
Graze.
graze on the grass up there. It was really green and beautiful still. And but as we went up, there was a lion up there.
Mountain lion.
A mountain lion. And so he said, "Uh-oh," the horse stopped, and it just stood there.
Just froze.
Yeah, wouldn't move, and he knew that there was something there. And sure enough, that lion looked at us, and we just sat there, and it just stared at us. And all of a sudden, it turned around and went away.
Yeah.
So we went on over into the area where the other horses were.
What happened after that?
I can't remember. Oh, I went up there all by myself the next day.
Oh, did you?
Mhm.
On the horse or?
No, I walked up there.
Well, yeah, she had to hike around too. Up there.
Yeah, I walked up to that area just to look at the horses again, the ones that were up there grazing. And they were all over this beautiful area and grazing, and I sat down. Well, when I sat down, then they started to come over, and I didn't know what they would do, so I would stand up, and they'd turn around. And then I'd sit down, and they'd start coming over again, and then I'd stand up. And then I decided, I guess I better go back down. So I went back on down to the area.
And then, I was trying to think what happened after that.
Well, that was our first meeting. That was it.
Yeah.
That's how we met. And he said, well, the ranch is closed, and I would like to take you back.
Oh yeah, instead of putting her back on the bus, I told her, and I told the folks, well, they had to go down too. We had to
Yes.
go down. They had to stay in a hotel room in Denver for the winter because we had to close the place all up. See?
Yeah.
And so that's where we were headed. But they took their car and went down, and I took one of that old Studebaker pickup, and I put her in it and went all the way back down to Denver to take her home in East Denver. And we sat in front of we sat in front of her house in East Denver, and we started visiting, sitting in front. And we talked in there for a couple of hours, it seemed like, or more.
Yeah. Yeah, we did just visiting.
Yeah, just visiting.
Getting to know one another
Yeah.
a little bit. And then he said that he was going to have to go up to, where was it?
Back to the hotel with him.
Well, back to the hotel, but then you were going to go get a job for the
Oh yeah,
summer.
I always had to get a job for the winter.
For the winter, I mean,
Yeah.
not the summer, but the winter, yeah.
So I got a job with Coors Beer Distributorship up in Craig, Colorado. And what I was doing is delivering kegs and cartons of beer, Coors beer, to all the bars up there around Craig and then in the little towns around and through the cities. And that was my job, is to deliver this beer. And so the winter came, and I parked out an old 1935 Plymouth that I drove up there. I took her home, and we sat out in front in that old thing. But I took it all the way up to Craig, and it started snowing, real snow country. So I just sit outside, and it completely buried the old Plymouth. So I was stuck pretty good until, was it a Christmas holiday?
No, before then, you thought, I really would love to have her write to me.
Oh, well, yeah,
Back in
right
that
away
day-
I wrote to you.
Well, back in that day, women didn't call men.
No.
Women did not write letters first.
So I didn't hear from her for a day or two,
So he didn't hear from
see.
me, and he was worried, so he decided to write to me. So I answered immediately. And every single day we went back and forth
We
with
had
letters.
piles of letters from every single day I was up there. We went back and forth. Our whole courtship was in mail.
And he shared those letters with his men that he was working for.
Yeah.
And
Sure did.
then you decided you were going to come down and visit.
It was Christmas holidays.
Yeah.
It was Christmas holidays, and I wanted to come down and visit, but my car was all buried. So I went to the bus depot, and I going to get me a ticket to take the bus to Denver. But the driver come up to me, or I don't know, he was standing there also waiting for everybody to check in, you know. And when I started to buy a ticket, and he says, do you know how to drive a truck? Do you know how to shift? And I said, oh yeah. I says, on the ranch we got trucks. I drive those most of the time. He says, well, I'll tell you what. He says, I'll get you on free if you help me drive this doggone bus over those passes down to Denver. I says, would you do that? And he says, you bet. So he says, oh man, that's great. And so he didn't, I don't know, can't remember whether they bought a ticket or not. I don't think so. I think they let me do it to help him. So I sat beside him. They put me a little bench or chair right beside him, the driving of the bus. And so we started off, and we come to first Vail Pass up there, and had to go over the pass, and boy, it was icy, snowy, and
that's before they had all this.
And he had put chains on the bus. Yeah, it wasn't a freeway at those days, you know. It was just a narrow, winding highway, and pretty dangerous. So I sat beside him, and I shifted those gears all the way up there for him. All he could do, he says, to handle this bus full of people and drive it. He couldn't take a hand off that steering wheel. And so I shifted that thing all the way over the top of that and down. And then we come to Berthoud Pass. And he says, why don't you do the same thing? And I said, oh, sure. So I shifted it all the way over Berthoud Pass, all the way up and down it. And then had a big old bus full of people. And we got over just fine. He stopped on the other side and took off the chains. And then he could drive it the rest of the way. And I sat beside him and visited and made good friends out of him. And we pulled into the bus stop, and I got off the bus. And
you went to the motel.
And I went to the hotel, yeah. And then I took the pickup that they had there. That's what it was. I was trying to figure out how I got the car pickup in front. But
it wasn't a pickup then. It was
your
dad.
Yeah, it was a Studebaker pickup.
Or was it?
Yeah, we had.
I thought it was a car.
No. Well, maybe it was. He might have had the car there.
He did. You had the pickup there that got buried in the snow.
Yeah, so I had it.
So
yeah, that's what
car.
it was. I took his car and come to see her. But we visited there then in that car for 2 or 3 hours, and really got to know each other, personal lives and things like this, you know. And
well, anyway, he asked me if I would be willing to marry him.
Yeah.
And I said, I really love you, but I have to know that you have received Christ as your Savior.
Yeah, that's what it was. She wouldn't marry me unless I knew Christ. She had become a Christian by that time, and I thought I was because of the Christian family, you know.
I was a Christian before I came up there.
Yeah.
In the first place.
Oh, yeah, I know you were.
So, and I knew he had to receive Christ as his own personal Savior.
Yeah, because I remember carrying her Bible.
Yes.
All around with her.
And if he didn't, then unless two agree, how can they walk together?
Yeah, she sure did. And boy, I was really upset. So I left her in the house, and I drove on back down to the hotel, and I told my dad, my mother and dad, I said, you know, I asked her to marry me, and they said, you did? And I said, yeah. But I said she wouldn't marry me unless I was a Christian that accepted Christ, you know. And he says, let's go for a walk. Dad did.